Well, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Today we're launching the Conservatives campaign for this year's elections in English local authorities. On the 3rd of May, we'll see elections taking place in shire districts, in unitaries, in metropolitan boroughs across the land. As well as that, there's going to be 3 mayoral elections and, of course, the elections to the London Assembly. Conservative local authorities deliver a better service, better value for money. They produce at much lower prices, doing much more for less. Under the last Labour government, council tax doubled across England. All thanks to Gordon Brown and his fiddle funding and the unburdened fundings helped on by Mr Ed Miliband and Mr Ed Balls. Despite Labour's fiddle, Conservative councils still charge less on Band D council tax bill. The Liberal Democrats charge the highest. The Labour government let spending get out of control and maxed out the nation's credit card. Today, every bit of the public sector must do its part to reduce Labour's crippling deficit, including local government, which represents a quarter of all public spending. Conservatives are helping to clean up Labour's mess. Conservative councils are embracing transparency, better procurement, innovation and joint working. It is lazy Labour authorities that just can't be bothered. They just want to make political cuts to spite the government, efficiency requiring too much hard work. Rather than opening their books, Labour councils like Nottingham have simply slammed their butts absolutely shut. And I think it is to the shame of the Labour leadership that they've endorsed this. Yet we're embracing secrecy to hide all the money that they've wasted. And look at the sight of Labour councils closing down libraries, but protecting spending on full-time trade union militants and town hall prouders. To Labour, the unions, left-wing propaganda is more important than children's library books. The unions bankroll the Labour Party, and in return, Labour councils use the rates to bankroll the unions. Only the taxpayer loses out. But Conservatives are cutting such waste and non-jobs, helping keep councils' tax down for hard-working families and for pensioners. The last Labour government hiked your taxes, borrowed up to their necks and wasted your money. That, sadly, is what Labour is like. Don't let Labour do to your council what they did to the country. Thank you very much. And now it's my pleasure to introduce the chairman of the Conservative Party, my dear chum, Sayeeda.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, comrades, friends, what better way than to spend your afternoon in the baking sunshine in the lovely county of Derbyshire? And what better way than to be stood here being sandwiched between my great friend Eric Pickles and the great man, the Prime Minister. And I hope I learn a little bit from both of them. The man who says it as it is and the Prime Minister who doesn't play it safe, who does the right thing by the country. So let me say it as it is. It's going to be tough. These are going to be tough elections. We're doing them at the backdrop when we're a party in government. And we're fighting these elections, which 4 years ago we fought when Labour were about 20-odd% in the polls and we were riding high in 40-odd% of the polls. These are seats that we won, which are deep in Labour heartland. And therefore, I know it's going to be tough. But what I'm also confident about, and I know this from fighting up and down the country alongside you over the last 6-9 months that we've been out campaigning, what I also know is that you at council level are delivering some fantastic results in difficult times. You're prioritising those things that matter to people and you're cutting out the waste that should have been cut out years and years ago. You're actually making sure that the cost of living is kept down by reducing council tax, and you're making sure that you're prioritising needs for local communities. Let me also say this, we're not playing it safe. We're fighting every single area. We're fighting in more seats this time than we've ever fought before. We've got more candidates across the country than we've ever had before, and we're fighting more candidates in seats than the Labour Party is or the Liberal Democrats are. So we're not taking anything for granted. We're not saying that there are any no-go areas, and we're making sure that we're going to get out there and send out that very clear message that Eric has just talked about. Don't let Labour do to your councils what they've done to the country. And this country, ladies and gentlemen, is being led by a guy who is acting in the national interest, making those tough calls, not playing it safe, and doing the right thing by the nation. So it gives me great pleasure, ladies and gentlemen, to introduce to you the leader of the Conservative Party and the Prime Minister, David Cameron.
Thank you. Thank you, Sayeeda. Thank you, Eric. And above all, thanks to all of you. I know how hard you work as local councillors. I know how hard you work as council leaders, putting in place policies on the ground that make a difference to people's lives, keeping people's bills down, doing the right thing for our country. As Sayeeda says, it's not always easy when your party is in government in Westminster, but I have huge respect for what you do and the work that you do. You are really a fine group of people. Thank you very much. And today, right here in Derbyshire, there is no better place to set out our party's ambition for this country and the difference we're making in power. And that is why I'm formally launching our local election campaigns today. This is the real heart of England, a place of hard work, of independent minds and strong communities, a place where people want government on their side, but they know it's not the answer to every question. A place where people want jobs in growing businesses, good homes and strong families, not a life waiting for welfare handouts. And friends, these are Conservative ambitions. Here in Amber Valley, it's Labour that let people down and the Conservatives who are delivering the changes that people need. It's a local Conservative council that has frozen the council tax for the third year running. And let's remind people, under Labour, council tax doubled. So don't let anyone claim that the Conservative Party doesn't speak for people in every part of Britain, because we are the proud party of this one nation. We will always defend it. That's why last year in Brussels, when I was faced with an EU treaty that wasn't in our country's interests, I had no hesitation in using our veto for the first time in history. And I promise that we will continue to show that resolve, because, my friends, we are going to need it, because we've come into government in some incredibly challenging times. The Eurozone is on the brink of another recession. Huge changes are sweeping the Middle East, but also great threats. Western economies, Britain included, are trying to recover from the biggest financial collapse in decades. Now, this party doesn't believe in ducking challenges. It knows you have to raise your sights and meet them. It knows that being in government isn't about steadying the ship or just hoping things will get better. It's about taking the right long-term decisions and calling on all the resources of this great country so that we break through to better times ahead. So when it comes to our economy, deal with the debt, don't put it off. When it comes to our society, reform those public services, don't give in to vested interests. Support freedom abroad, don't give in to dictators like Gaddafi or Assad. Stand up for freedom in Europe too. It is an open market we want, not a country called Europe, and that's another reason we'll be staying out of the euro for good. In all things, act in the national interest. Do what is right, however tough. Let's lay the foundations for something that is really better. That is what we've been doing, and I want to thank you for the support that you have shown us. But now, once again, I need you to do what you do best. We've got to mobilise people across England for some very important elections coming up less than 3 weeks from now. We've got to get our campaigners out from Tunbridge Wells to Trafford, from Havant to Harrogate. And today I want to talk about the 3 big messages that we should be taking out onto the streets of our country. First, We need to shout loud and proud about what we've done for people. Take our record in local government. Which party runs the best value councils in the country? Which party has the lowest average council tax on a Band D home? Which party is leading the way on once again freezing council tax, again in most places this year, when it doubled under Labour? In every case, it's the Conservatives. It's Labour councils that remain trapped in their wasteful old ways. You know what they spent in Sunderland? £113,000 on lobbyists. Lambeth spent £30,000 on a sculpture called, get this, Foxes and Cherries. Camden spent £200,000 on 7 trade union activists. And then, of course, in London, there's Ken. Now, we used to say, Labour wastes your money and puts up your taxes. With Ken, we can say Labour wastes your money and won't even pay their taxes. And that is a message we're going to take across our capital. Even today, he still won't reveal what he earns and what he pays in taxes. So we're going to shine a spotlight on Labour's waste. We've changed the rules so that councils have to reveal everything they spend over £500. I know sometimes that's difficult to do, but it's people's money and we should show them where it goes. And we're also making councils hold a vote on huge salaries for top staff. And you know the only council that won't be transparent? That's right, Labour-controlled Nottingham. So let's take that argument for transparency out around the country. Because at the same time, we've given councils new freedoms to cooperate, saving a fortune in back office costs, to spend money from the business rate locally. And we've scrapped a ton of red tape that saw Whitehall order councils how to spend their money. But let's also shout about our record in national government too. Because you know what? Every single person has a reason to vote Conservative. The worker, no longer paying income tax because we're putting up personal allowance almost to £10,000 and we've taken 2 million people out of income tax altogether. The pensioner, getting the biggest ever cash rise in the state pension. That's right, an increase of £5.30 a week started this month. The entrepreneur, boosted by cuts in corporation tax, soon to be the lowest in any G7 country. The homeowner, saving money on their mortgage because we've kept interest rates low. The 24 million households that are better off thanks to those tax changes we brought in. To all those people, we must say this. There is only one box in which to put your cross on May the 3rd. And that is for the party that cares about the strivers, the battlers, the family raisers, the community builders, the Conservative Party. And in case that pencil should just hover, however briefly, over Labour's box, let us remind people what a complete and utter disaster Labour were for our country. It was an age of absurdity, when everything was turned upside down, where some people were paid more to stay at home than to go to work, where police spent more time filling in forms than they did on the beat, and where the solution to debt was, yes, debt, debt, and more debt. So our message once again is clear. If you look at what Labour did to our country, why on earth would you let them near your local council? The second message we've got to take out is that this party is actually the party setting the agenda for radical change in our country. Take housing, bricks and mortar. For the last decade, we've had to put up with a government that never understood the deep desire of people to buy and own their own home. They virtually destroyed the right to buy your council house. They wrapped councils in red tape and they saw house building slump to its lowest level since the 1920s. Do you know how old the average first-time buyer is if they can't get help from the bank of mum and dad? 35 years old. That is why we've got to get Britain building again and we've got to get Britain owning again. That's why we're stepping in and helping the builders who need finance. That's why we're making over government-owned land for 100,000 extra homes. And that is why we are bringing back the right to buy your council house with proper discounts to make it worth your while. This government is hard at work sorting out Labour's mess. Take education. Again, we've had to put up under Labour with a government that wanted to flatten aspiration. They never understood people's yearning to take control, to look after themselves and their families, for their children to do better than they did. They never understood those things. So for years we had an agenda that was about dumbing down standards, tolerating poor discipline, that failed millions of children. With Michael Gove in charge, the phrase, a party of radical change, has been filled with meaning. We're giving teachers the power to discipline children. We're giving heads the control to set their own curriculum. And we're giving far more choice and transparency to parents. Over 1,700 schools in England now have the freedoms that come with academy status. Only 203 of them created by Labour. But it's not enough to create good schools if a hard core of truants fail to turn up and study. Do you know what? Almost 400,000 pupils in our country today skip at least 15% of lessons in a year. That is like missing a whole month of school. What chance have you got, if you do that, of making up the lost ground? So we've got to crack this problem. That is why we asked Charlie Taylor, an experienced former head teacher in a tough inner-city school, to help. Today he's published, and I strongly welcome, an excellent report. He asks an important question. If parents can't get their children to school, should they really be able to go on claiming with impunity their child benefit? We talk a lot about rights in our country. It's time we talked more about responsibilities. The responsibilities that we've got to get our children to school, to give them a chance in life. And this government is going to take this issue seriously. I'm not prepared to see truancy and ill discipline wreck the lives of another generation. Take immigration. The last government just opened the doors and let everyone in. We are taking tough action. Proper checks to see if your marriage was just for a passport. Done. Proper checks requiring that migrants can speak English. Done. Proper checks on migrants who claim to be students. Done. Proper limits on people coming from outside the European Union. Done. Closing bogus colleges. Also done. Bringing in exit controls to make sure visitors from outside Europe actually leave. Done. And we're going to end the abuse of loopholes in the human rights legislation. Now, when you take tough action like this, some say you're better off just staying quiet or you'll offend people. Don't talk about rigour in education. It might sound like you're talking good schools down. Don't promise action on immigration. It's simpler to say nothing. I say nonsense. When you're not happy with the way things are, it is government's job to speak up, to speak out, and to get things done, and that is exactly what this government is up to. So we should tell everyone, if you're sick of the status quo, if you're tired of being told that this is the best you can hope for, if you want leadership that admires and encourages those who want the best for themselves and their families, if you want real change, if you want a radical alternative, you know who to vote for. It's us. But the third thing, the third message, the biggest message I want you to take out there is not about particular policies. It's not about Labour. It's about what motivates and drives this government. When you come into office, any party has a choice. You can tinker around a bit and put a lick of paint on the old problems. You can commission reports and reviews and just shunt the problems further down the line. You can blame inaction on the bad times you're in, or you can say in the good times you don't need to bother. Or you can take a different path. You can close that number 10 door behind you and say, this is our chance. This is a precious chance to change our country, and we want to seize it. You can always hear the whispering voices saying, will you play it safe if you want to win a majority and don't rub too many people up the wrong way? I say no. That is not us. That is not our party. We are making the long-term changes we talked about in all those years of opposition. For years people said, you can't really reform and cut welfare. The bills just get higher. It's a fact of British life and there's nothing you can do about it. We said, hold on. It can't be right that we pay more to people who stay at home than go out to work. It can't be right to pay out 40, 50, 60,000 pounds for one family's housing benefit. We've been the first government to come in and properly get a grip on this. The Welfare Act is the most radical, long-term reform this country's seen for a generation. Making work pay, getting people trained and back into work, ending the something-for-nothing culture, and for the first time in our history, putting a cap on welfare that one family can get, and making sure that family doesn't get more money than the family that is out at work. Now, for years, government said we could put off the big decisions about infrastructure, that we could just make do and mend, and somehow it wouldn't matter if we limped behind the rest of the world. We said, not on our watch. Even at a time of tight budgets, we are pressing ahead. Crossrail, high-speed rail. In the Midlands, we're making Birmingham a super-fast broadband city. In the north, we're investing in the electrification of rail lines from Liverpool to Leeds. And across the country, we're taking on those big challenges. For years, people said, you can't reform public sector pensions and make them affordable. It's just too difficult. You'll never get it done. It is difficult, but we've done it. Today, we can look public sector workers in the eye and say, you will have that generous, guaranteed pension, but we can also look the taxpayer in the eye and say we have cut the long-term cost of public sector pensions virtually in half, and there is now a fair and affordable way to pay for them. And of course, for years, government acted as though debt could be ignored and left to pile up, and somehow tomorrow would pay for today. We have refused to take this path. In the past year, we've cut over £10 billion off the deficit. We've got interest rates that are amongst the lowest of any major economy. Now, yes, I know, cutting spending is tough. Budgets are tough. But in the years ahead, people will look back and see that what we're doing today has laid the foundations for a stronger and sounder economy. We came in as a coalition to make long-term decisions in the national interest, and we're making them. And the reason we're doing this goes back to our values. We believe in responsibility. And we know that it's not just irresponsible, it is immoral if you keep passing debts onto your children because you don't have the courage to face them today. We believe in fairness, real fairness, which is why we're building a welfare system where work really pays. And we believe in enterprise, people rising up on the back of their own graft, which is why we're cutting business taxes, we're getting rid of pointless red tape, and we're making sure that anyone who wants to put the effort in can get on and get up in life. So for my friends, we may take our hits, but always remember this. We're making the hard, the long-term decisions that are vital to the future of Britain. We're doing our duty to our country, and that is what Conservatives do in government. So these elections that are just around the corner, we've got to take out this message about our values, about our achievements, about the difference that we're making. Now is the time not to put our feet up, but to roll our sleeves up. We don't need a sort of strategy or a kind of campaign. We need a full-on, full-throttle fight. To get out there and say to people, that boost in your pay packet, that's because the Conservatives are in government. You live within your means, the government does too. You want a better future for your children, that's what the Conservatives are all about. You understand what's right for this country, so do we. That's what we need to tell people, that this is a government looking at the horizon, not the headlines, that cares about working for the long-term good, not short-term popularity, and that works in the national interest, not the party interest. That is us. That is what we believe. It is our job to get this message out over the next 3 weeks. So please, give it everything you've got on those high streets, in those villages, in those town halls, in those campaigns. Let's fight for a great Conservative result in these local elections. You've got records to stand on. You've frozen the council tax. You've done the right thing. I'm right with you. Let's get out there and fight for it. Thank you.